So I already know that I am super late to the party on this particular subject, but it was just too good for me to pass up. So by now you all know that there was a Daily Caller journalist who crashed an Ocasio-Cortez rally, and she almost got red-pilled by her and Cori Bush. So this is the article she penned for the Daily Caller explaining her experience. This is from Virginia Kruta. I saw something truly terrifying. I saw just how easy it would be were I less involved and less certain of our nation's founding and its history to fall for the populist lines they were shouting from that stage. I saw how easy it would be as a parent to accept the idea that my children deserve healthcare and education. I saw how easy it would be as someone who has struggled to make ends meet to accept the idea that a living wage was a human right. Above all, I saw how easy it would be to accept the notion that it was the government's job to make sure that those things were provided. I watched as both Ocasio-Cortez and Bush deftly chopped America up into demographics, pointed out how those demographics had been victimized under the current system, and then promised to be the voice for those demographics. The movement, Ocasio-Cortez shouted, knows no zip code, it knows no state, it knows no race, it knows no gender, it knows no documented status. I left the rally with a photo, in part to remind myself of that time I crashed a rally headlined by a socialist, but also in part to remind myself that there, but for the grace of God, go I. Now, that last little line there, I feel like the only type of person that would write something like that would be someone who literally smells their own farts, who bottles it up and smells their own farts or huffs their farts as it comes out of their assholes. So I want to go back to the bullet points that she posted here because that's essentially the overall takeaways. I saw how easy it would be as a parent to accept the idea that my children deserve healthcare and education. So let me get this straight, Virginia. Going into this rally, prior to this rally, you didn't just instinctively think that your children deserved healthcare and education? I mean, what do you think your tax dollars are for? You just give the money to the government and don't expect anything in return? I mean, and furthermore, people are willing to kill for their children. There's just that evolutionary instinct ingrained in all parents. And she's sitting here, she kind of had this epiphany. I saw how easy it was to accept that my children deserve healthcare and education. It's easy to accept that because your children do deserve healthcare and education. I mean, do progressives actually care more about your children, Virginia, than you do? Because if you don't think your children deserve healthcare and education, I mean, I don't know what to say about you. She also said, I saw how easy it would be as someone who has struggled to make ends meet to accept the idea that a living wage was a human right. So prior to this rally, you were okay with individuals working full-time and not making a living wage? You're basically in support of slavery? I mean, it's not actual slavery, right? But it's wage slavery, where you're working and you can barely survive. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I don't get the mindset of individuals like this who couldn't see previously how these things weren't no-brainers. And it kind of goes to show you how out of touch she really is, because working class Americans, I mean, if you tell them, or ask them rather, if they think their kids deserve healthcare and education, they're going to tell you yes. And they will vociferously debate you if you try to contend that their children don't deserve healthcare and education. And understand that in opposing these types of policies that Cori Bush and Ocasio-Cortez are talking about, conservatives are now literally trying to defend the idea that their own children don't deserve healthcare and education. That's the position that they're in now.
God damn it!
She said she's against the idea of government guaranteeing and paying for these things. But Virginia, your tax dollars are going to the government and you're not getting anything in return. I mean, don't you think that it's reasonable for you to demand things in return for the tax dollars you're giving to the government? I mean, imagine if you couldn't choose the groceries when you went to the grocery store, and each week you gave a store clerk $200 and they chose the groceries for you, and they just brought out some raisins. They, spent about $10 of your money on raisins, gave that to you, and then they pocketed the rest of the money, gave it to their friends. Wouldn't you be angry with that? Because clearly raisins aren't nutritional enough to sustain our bodies, and we gave them money fully expecting a balanced nutritional diet in return, but we're not getting that. So I mean, when you extend that logic to taxes, isn't it equally absurd that we're giving them all of this money, and what are they doing with it? They're funding endless wars. They're giving tax subsidies to big oil. They're giving the rich tax cuts. Aren't you angry with that? I mean, I can't get the logic of individuals who are basically okay with the government fucking them over, taking them money and not giving them anything in return. I mean, that's what the social contract is. You give the government money, and in exchange, they provide you with services for that money. Aren't you angry that you're not getting anything in return for the tax dollars that you're paying? I am. And a lot of working class Americans are, hence the popularity of individuals like Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Kaniela Ng. So she wasn't done talking about this rally just yet, because she did appear on Fox News, and I want to share the clip with you because it gives us a little bit more insight into her thinking.
Daily Caller's Virginia Kruta, thank you so much for being with us. And you wrote an op-ed about it. Tell us why you went to her rally. What was the interest?
Thanks for having me. Well, I went kind of to see what the fuss was about, really, because, I mean, I've been to conservative rallies before. I've been to a Trump speech. I've been to a Ted Cruz rally when he was running for president. And I just kind of wanted to see, why the message was resonating, because really the socialist message is gaining steam within the Democrat Party.
So based upon what you saw, why are people drawn to this message?
Well, I was listening to them talk, to Ocasio-Cortez and also to Cori Bush, who she was stumping for in St. Louis. And they say things, they talk about things that everybody wants, especially like if you're a parent. They talk about education for your kids, health care for your kids, the things that you want. And, if you're not really paying attention to how they're going to pay for it, or the rest of that, it's easy to fall into that trap and say, my kids deserve this. And, well, maybe the government should be responsible for helping me with that.
Mm-hmm. Virginia, as a conservative, when you're sitting in that audience or standing in that audience and you're listening to that message, how did it make you feel? Were you angry? Were you more drawn to that?
I was mostly uncomfortable because I was surrounded by a group of people who were talking about how they had gotten involved because they were tired of being angry all the time. And it seems like so much effort to be angry about everything instead of to focus on what you could do to change it.
Okay, so I want to read her quote back because I think this is fascinating. They talk about things that everybody wants, especially like if you're a parent, they talk about education for your kids, healthcare for your kids, things that you want. And, if you're not really paying attention to how they're going to pay for it, or the rest of that, it's easy to fall into that trap and say, my kids deserve this, and, well, maybe the government should be responsible for helping me with that. If I saw my mom talking about how she didn't think I deserved healthcare and education, my response would be, fuck you, Mom. Because, what parent doesn't think that their children deserve healthcare and an education? I honestly, I was flabbergasted when I saw this, and I still can't really collect my thoughts because I was just taken aback by how out of touch people like her are. They're willing to deny healthcare and education to their own children if it means they get to, live in this conservative bubble where the government takes your money and gives you nothing in return for it. Now, what's interesting is that if you really do pay attention to how we pay for these things, you'll see that she's just misinformed. In fact, a Koch-funded study recently came out showing that Medicare for All would cost less than our current system. It would actually save America billions of dollars each year. So clearly we can pay for it. America isn't unique. I mean, it's conservatives who often espouse the talking point, we're the greatest country on earth, right? So for the greatest country on earth, why can't we do what other countries and smaller countries have done? Why are we incapable of doing something that our neighbors to the north have done? We're not incapable. America is just as capable, if not more capable than other countries, because we are the richest nation on earth. Why can't we do it? It's because people like Virginia bought into right-wing propaganda. She bought into propaganda espoused by politicians who are bankrolled by health insurance companies. Now, she talked about this with regard to the crowd and how she felt. I was mostly uncomfortable because I was surrounded by a group of people who were talking about how they had gotten involved because they were tired of being angry all the time. It seems like so much effort to be angry about everything instead of what you can do to change it. But Virginia, they were focused on what they could do to change it. They were done with being angry. They wanted to actually affect change, hence why they attended a policy-oriented rally. I mean, it just feels like she's trying to be intellectually obtuse and not see where they're coming from. Now, with that being said, I will give her credit for kind of putting herself out there and really trying to open herself up to new ideas, because I think that that's really important. I think that a lot of us, given the current climate of hyperpolarization, we tend to box ourselves in our left or right wing echo chambers, and we never escape it. So I am actually, I want to give her credit where it's due for actually trying to hear out Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and trying to hear the argument of her opponents. But at the same time, if she is genuinely curious about understanding where people like Ocasio-Cortez, or more specifically where the working class is coming from, you've got to get out of that bubble. You've got to actually listen to people and stop listening to what right-wing Republican Party strategists and conservative think tanks say, because they're in this business to dupe you over because they want to get rich off of it. That's all this is about. So I couldn't not talk about this because I found it fascinating, and, I'll give her credit again for going to this rally, but I think that this was really a learning experience for us as well, because we kind of get some insight into the mindset of the modern American conservative. They don't even think their own children deserve healthcare and education, which to me is absurd. Or maybe they think that their own children deserve healthcare and education, but just not that the government should provide it for them. So let me ask you this, one last thing. In the event your child needed a medical procedure that was very expensive and you couldn't afford it out of pocket, it was just too much, do you not think that the government should assist you with that, since you fund the government with your tax dollars? Do you not think that that's appropriate or even necessary? Of course, Virginia wouldn't deny her child health care on the principle of conservatism. Of course you wouldn't. So all we're asking, Virginia, is for our tax dollars to help us out. We want something in exchange for all the money we're giving to government. That's it. It's that simple, really.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.